Good morning. Our lecture today is about the environment. In this chapter, we are going to talk about externalities and the negative impact of pollution problem on the economy and what are the different policies that the government take in order to overcome this problem. What's meant by pollution? Pollution means waste that is not recycled. Pollution causes one main problem which is known as spillover costs, or in other words, negative externalities. Spillover costs or negative externality results in inefficient allocation of resources and inequity. So first of all, let's define externalities or spillover costs. What's meant by externality? Externality is the cost or benefit of an economic activity that spills over onto the rest of the society. So we can define it as cost or benefit to a third party other than the seller or the buyer of the commodity. Externality can be positive or negative, or in other words, can be spillover cost or spillover benefit. Spillover cost, which is negative externality, which is cost to third party other than sellers and buyers of the commodity. Negative externality or spillover cost affects firms or individual as they affect the two main problems, which is inequality. So the distribution of goods and services are going to be uh, not an equitable one, and also affect in terms of efficiency of allocation of resources. The opposite with respect to spillover benefit. We can define it as positive externality or benefit to a third party other than seller or buyer of the commodity. Also, negative positive externality had the same impact regarding inequity and inefficient allocation of resources. So both of them cause the same problem. What's meant by inequity? Inequity means shifts of costs, of course, or benefits to groups that didn't incur them. And with the same, with respect to the benefit, they are the same. They are shifts of benefit to groups that didn't earn them. What about inefficiency? Inefficient resource allocation. This means that people can produce and consume too much of a commodity, and this is the case of negative externality. This means that there is over allocation of resources. Or the opposite in case of positive externality, that we produce and consume too little of a product, and this is under allocate resources. This is the case of positive externality. Let's make it more clear. What is the effect of pollution in a single market? And then we are going to talk about the impact on with respect to two different markets. Number one, in case of a single market, the effects of pollution in a single market. Let's consider, for example, the market for transportation. So this is quantity and the price, demand curve and supply curve. Equilibrium point will be achieved at, say, 5 thousands of tickets, and the equilibrium price is 400 per unit. Actually, in this case, we don't care about pollution, but let's assume that the economy can only absorb a fixed amount of pollution. After that point, this is going to affect the economy negatively. So here we have to differentiate between private cost and social cost. So the curve SB in this case represents private cost or supply curve from the point of view of the producer. So in this case, producer would like to maximize his own benefit regardless of the pollution or the negative impact to the society. But actually, if you are going to add or include the additional cost of preventing pollution, so we have to talk about the social cost, not the private one. Social costs includes both private cost and spillovers cost. So we are going to add additional cost to the private cost. So cost of production is going to increase. As a result, we are going to have a new supply curve which is SS, supply curve with respect or from the point of view of the society. And at this point, this is the new equilibrium point at quantity equivalent to 4 and a higher price level which is 500. So due to adding a higher cost or additional cost to the original cost, so supply is going to decrease and the equilibrium quantity is going to decrease from 5 to 4, and the equilibrium price is going to increase from 4 to 500, which means that there is over allocation of resources. So over allocation means production of more than the socially optimum amount of goods and services. So in case of negative externality, we are going to produce 5 units, but actually the socially optimal quantity is 4. So there is over allocation of resources. So if the economy or if the additional cost has been considered in producing goods and services, so the market output is going to be efficient and desirable. What about the effect of pollution from one market onto another market? So let's take two different industries, paper industry and beer industry. And for simplicity, we are going to assume that the initial condition or initial demand and supply curves for both of them are the same. So this is with respect to paper industry, and this is beer industry, quantity and the price, quantity and the price. Initial situation, this is demand curve, and this is supply curve. Equilibrium quantity will be at Q, and equilibrium price at P. The same here, equilibrium quantity Q and equilibrium price is P. Now let's assume that producers of paper found that cost of preventing pollution is very high. As a result, they are going to ignore cost, or they are not going to prevent pollution. As a result, cost of production is going to decrease. So producers can produce more and supply more. So supply curve will shift to the right. And we have a new equilibrium point at a lower price level. At the same time, beer industry uses water, and water has been polluted due to production of paper. But production of beer is highly affected by pollution of water. So beer producers would like to spend more in order to prevent water pollution. So this caused a higher price or higher cost of prevention. So cost of production is going to increase, and supply curve is going to shift to the left. And we have a new equilibrium point at Q dash and a higher price P dash. So due to pollution caused by paper industry, the society consumes less beer and pays higher price. So in this case, there is under allocation of resources. What's meant by under allocation of resources? Means that the society or the economy produce less than the socially optimal point. If there is no pollution, we would like to produce Q. But due to pollution caused by another industry, so we are going to produce Q dash. So we produce less than the socially optimum amount. Methods of regulation. Now we would like to control or avoid pollution. There are three different methods in order to limit the adverse environmental effect of pollution. Number one, the standard approach. Standards means maximum level of pollution that are acceptable. So the government has to announce that the maximum amount acceptable level of pollutant is specific number. Any level exceeds this amount, the firm will be punished using fines or something like that. This approach is the easiest one. Number 2, performance standard. Performance standard means that a regulation that specifies the required level of performance. But not the mean of compliance. Number 3, design standard. It specifies, this is a regulation that specifies both compliance and performance. So this means they announce the fixed amount of pollutant acceptable in the economy and how to achieve, or the mechanism of achieving this amount. Okay, so sorry, this is number A and this is B. Okay, number 2, pollution fees. There are two different types of pollution fees: effluent and emissions. They are somehow like taxes on production, causing water pollution. While emissions, taxes on production causing air pollution. Number 3, marketable pollution permits. It allows the owners of the permits to produce a given amount of pollution. So this means that the maximum acceptable level of pollution is going to be divided into units, and the government is going to sell these units to producers in the form of permits. The permits can be bought and sold. One more possible solution is conservation and recycling. Let's see the impact of taxes on the economy, how the government can use taxes in order to overcome the problem of pollution or reduce the number of units produced. So let's compare between two different countries. The initial situation is the same in both of them. So this is the equilibrium before imposing taxes. The quantity that will be produced for tons, 4,000 tons or 4 million tons of any product, okay, and the equilibrium price is 2. Now let's assume that country A is a low tax country, so they are going to add only one additional pound per ton. So the supply curve will shift to the right, to the left, and we are going to have a new supply curve at 3, for example. This is equivalent to $1 tax rate. This is low tax country. And the equilibrium price is going to increase to 2.5. And in another case, which is a high tax country, so the government would like to impose $2 per unit. So this is the new supply curve. And this is the new equilibrium. This is $2, which is taxes. So if you are going to compare between the low tax country and the high tax country, we can find that in case of high tax country, consumption is going to decrease from 4 to 2, and the price is going to increase from 2 to 3. While in case of low tax country, consumption is going to decrease from 4 to 3, while price will increase from 2 to 2.5. So this means that high tax country encourages greater conservation than the lower tax one. Which means, in other words, if you are going to impose a higher tax compared to other countries, so the amount of pollution is going to decrease as people will consume less from these commodities. This is the end of our lecture today. Thank you.